Welcome to Wickerson Studios. I am showing another basic script, and I realize I've been going a little complex because I just like to dig into my own head a little too far without communicating to anyone else. But this is very simple, and I think it's a simple script to get people using geometries to build some cool architectural things. I'm going to show you a couple of techniques with this, basically populating a rotating scale geometry on top of a patterned surface edit. So let's just jump into it. We could probably downsize this so you can still see all the windows, and I think I can squeeze the script into here. I just pop my ugly face down here. I think we're in business. All right, so going into it, I have a very simple surface edit, which is basically, if I click this on, it is basically this shape right here. And it tapers up and it changes its height, as you can see, and it undulates with a sine curve. Well, actually, not a sine curve, just pulling and pushing it. Basically, I build myself a rectangle, and in building a rectangle, I've set that rectangle with a domain that's plus and minus whatever I want, 84 it happens to be, so I can change the scale of that. You'll see it's not only connected to this script, it's connected to another script as well. So we'll just go into here and look at it all. That rectangle goes through a divided surface of a certain amount of points, which is actually the 93 by 93. And that will generate points when I flatten it, and I will split that. I will dispatch that to one group and another, and I will grab a list length of the top one. And I will take those, I will construct another domain and range as I bring these points into a surface from points. Generated by those points, but now that I have control of those points, I'm going to lift every other one, or whatever this dispatch pattern is. And I like a gene pool to find a dispatch pattern, because you have more than just a yes/no boolean, and you don't have to type it into panel every time you want to change it. You can slide this around and make some cool patterns with your gene pool. So if we take a look at that, here's a sample of it. As I start to play with that gene pool, move these around, you can see that it jumps the height of different ones here. And I've got a strange loft, but it's good to start with a 0. Yeah, and maybe not end with a 1, end with a 0. Pull up something in the center. I'm just surface editing this thing, which isn't very hard, and you can see the different patterns that you get. That said, I used on motion a Z, a range through the domain. I needed the list item of how many items there are, and I need to drop this equation down x minus 1. Sometimes I get in the habit of, and I've done this several times for people, going in here and typing in the equation, x minus 1. And that way I have a tool that I can constantly keep using. You just have to remember to zoom in here. If you're not using the Y, you can take it out, or you can set it to Y. Set it back to X, and there you go. And now it's something that you could plug this in, and without having this expression editor, if I move this over here, if I don't have this expression editor set to x minus 1 already, and I just let it default to nothing, oh my gosh, slippy fingers. Now I can plug that in. That will bring the count down. That should make it work, hopefully. Domain, oh, list item, what am I talking about? Don't want my domain in there. There we go. That'll run it, and that'll run the same script. There we go. And then I scaled it a little bigger. And the reason I scaled it a little bigger, you're going to find out why. So I have this inside one, and I have this outside one. I'll show you why I scaled it bigger. Because I definitely want to orient. I actually want to project points onto it, but I don't want to have a point sitting on its edge, because my geometries would then fall off the edge. So I just scaled it up a wee bit, a quarter, 0.25. Anyhow, the other thing I built from the same thing was I made another border off to the side. This time I just made it 15 by 15. I didn't take it into the domain. I took it off to the quarter size of that panel. And in doing so, I then populated that. I made a circle that shared the same 15 radius. So I've got a circle, and I've got a section of a square with points. And I make a surface on top of that circle, and then I just do a project point to that geometry. I call out a little bit of the information with a call pattern that's preset, the false, false, true, true. But another reason you could pull in, this is fairly interesting. If I pulled this in, it would use the same data. Not that you really need it. It would pull it. It would use that as the pattern, which just links the script a little bit, which is not really. And then this is a nice clean tree, because you'll see this list has a ton of null items in it. And keep in mind that you understand your data enough to use your whatever you can. And a great way to get rid of null items is just remove nulls. And that is set to true. So that removes nulls, and we're left with a pattern that has none of those. Then with those patterns, I move them, I project the point yet again, but I'm not projecting it onto this surface, which is smaller. I'm projecting it onto the bigger surface. And I'm left with those points that are there. And at that point, what do I do with those points? Well, I take those points, and basically the script up top is fairly simple. I put a box on each one of those points. But I could put a center box on those points if I enabled this and I disabled. Then you'd see it's a center box, but it goes below the surface, and I'm not really interested in that. So I'm going to disable that. I'm going to use the center box, and then it's based on that rectangle. And that rectangle I made extremely parametric, that I could actually use the same pattern. Always get in the habit of doing this. Find out the amount of items you need, put it into your steps, use that function in -1, take the domain, and then you have total control over the domain and range of what you want to circulate, move, or scale. So here you can see I have a scale on the Z factor going up, and of course it's situated on those points, so they don't start below. They change their height according to the surface underneath. So if I want to change this surface height, it's not too hard to do by going back in and changing the pattern of my my dispatch. And if I change that dispatch pattern as to what's done by a gene pool, I can change my geometries. And it just keeps everything geometric, and you're thinking in patterns, and I guess you have to think this way. So I've also got a rotation on these forms as we get here. I've got an ability to go from 0 to 2 pi. You know I like radians. And I also have a scale factor that I can scale up. But keep in mind, if I scale up on the xy, in the rectangle that's informing it, that's going to move the z. So I actually have control of the z to pull that back down again. So that's just an interesting technique. If we leave the file and leave this on, there you go. You've got a pretty cool script. I'll put it into my GitHub. Not too hard to understand. Simple surface edit. And you can really complicate things here. Like if you throw in a jitter here, it gets pretty cool. Like, and as you know, I love the jitter. Let's just grab a little jitter function, take that list and run it through there for a second. And there we go. You're going to end up with a lot different surface that's more crazy. And also, you don't have to import and use a barrette. You don't have to be putting on a rectangle. You can import anything you want. If you got a little STL of a morel mushroom, which I like, you pop that on there and you get a bunch of scaled and rotated different mushrooms sitting on this grassy scape. So I'm learning, like, teach basic scripts, get people to understand the geometry and moving things around. That's kind of a 101 approach. And then apply it to whatever you want. That's the whole point of these programs. Hope you